There is a moment you never see. It doesn't happen at the feeder. It doesn't happen the first time a bird lands in your yard, or the second, or even the 10th. It happens quietly, invisibly, in the mind of a creature you may have been watching for months without realizing it was doing something far more significant than eating your seed. At some point, and researchers now believe this moment is real, specific, and biological, a bird makes a decision about your yard that it does not reverse. Not this yard has food. Every yard with a feeder has food. Something deeper. Something closer to, this is the place I come back to. This is the place I trust. This is the safest place I have found. Most people never know that moment happened. They just notice, gradually, that the birds seem calmer, that they stay longer, that they return even when the feeder is empty, that something has quietly shifted, in the yard and in the bird, without either of you saying a word about it. What caused that shift is one of the most extraordinary things happening in your backyard right now. And once you understand it, you will never look at a returning bird the same way again. Welcome back to Backyard Birds Whisper. If you're new here, subscribe before you leave, because what you're about to learn is happening in your yard right now, in real time, and knowing it will permanently change the way you see the birds outside your window. Today we are going into the decision, the actual neurological, behavioral, scientific process by which a wild bird evaluates your yard, tests it, weighs it against everything its survival instincts are screaming at it, and chooses it anyway. Stay until the end, because the last thing we cover is the part of this process that has nothing to do with seed or shelter or safety in the way we normally think about it. It has to do with you, specifically, and what a bird's final decision about your yard is actually based on. Number 1. The first time a bird lands in your yard, it is not eating. It is testing. Watch a bird arrive at a feeder it has never visited before. Really watch it. It doesn't land at the feeder. It lands near it, on a branch 10 feet away, or on the fence post, or on the ground beneath. It sits there, looks. It processes. What it is doing in those moments is running a threat assessment so fast and so layered that no computer we have built comes close to replicating it. It is reading the sight lines. Where could a predator approach from? Is there cover nearby if something comes fast from above? How many escape routes are available from the feeder itself? It is reading the other birds. Are there species already feeding that it trusts? Chickadees at a feeder are a strong safety signal. Chickadees are among the most vigilant small birds in North America, and other species have learned that where chickadees feed calmly, the environment is probably safe. It is reading sound. Is the yard quiet in the right way, the relaxed background noise of a safe environment, or quiet in the wrong way, the sudden silence that signals something has frightened every other creature into stillness? And it is reading something researchers are only beginning to fully document. The behavioral signature of the humans associated with this place. That first visit is not a meal. It is an interview. And your yard is the one being evaluated. Number 2. After the first visit, the bird enters a testing phase that can last days or weeks, and most people have no idea it is happening. Here is what this looks like from the outside. The bird comes back. Then it comes back again. Irregular visits, different times of day, sometimes just a few seconds at the feeder before it leaves. You might think it's just passing through. You might think it isn't really your bird yet, but it is running a systematic evaluation. Researchers studying site fidelity in songbirds, the tendency of birds to return to the same locations over time, have found that the early return visits of a bird to a new site are not random. They are structured probes. The bird is testing variables. It visits at dawn when predator pressure is highest, to see how the yard holds up under the most dangerous conditions of the day. It visits in the middle of the afternoon when everything is calm, to calibrate what baseline safety feels like here. It visits in light rain, in wind, in cold, stress conditions that reveal whether a yard's safety is consistent or fragile. What it is building across all of those visits is a reliability profile. Not just is this yard safe, but is this yard consistently safe? Because for a bird, a yard that is safe most of the time and dangerous occasionally is worse than a yard that is only moderately safe all of the time. Unpredictability is more threatening than moderate risk. A bird can adapt to a known level of danger, It cannot adapt to a yard that surprises it. This is why the things you do consistently in your yard matter more than you realize. The steady routine of filling the feeder, moving slowly when you go outside, keeping the yard free from sudden disturbances. Every consistent, calm thing you do is a data point the bird is collecting quietly across dozens of visits, building a picture of whether this place can be trusted over time. Number 3. At some point the testing stops. And something changes. Researchers studying habitat selection in songbirds describe a threshold effect. Birds do not gradually become more comfortable with a site in a smooth, linear way. The comfort builds slowly, almost invisibly, and then, at a certain point, something shifts. The behavior changes in ways that are distinct and measurable. The bird starts arriving earlier in the morning. It stays longer per visit. It begins using the yard in ways it didn't before, bathing in the bird bath, foraging on the ground, perching in exposed spots it previously avoided. It starts arriving even when the feeder is empty, sitting in the nearby branches as if the yard itself, not just the food, is the destination. What is happening neurologically is this. The bird's stress response system, the same fight-or-flight architecture that keeps it alive in a world full of hawks and cats and cold, has recalibrated around your yard. The baseline level of alertness it maintains here has dropped. Not to zero. Wild birds never fully relax. Their survival depends on staying alert. But the threshold at which your yard triggers alarm has risen dramatically. Your yard has been reclassified. Not possible food source but known safe territory. The biological weight of that distinction is enormous. Safe territory is one of the rarest and most valuable things in a wild bird's life. Most birds spend their entire existence in a state of moderate vigilance, in environments that are adequate but never fully trusted. A yard that crosses into genuine safe territory, that earns that reclassification, becomes something a bird defends, returns to, and in some cases, organizes its entire daily life around. And here is what triggers the final crossing of that threshold. Here is the variable researchers keep finding at the center of this decision. It is almost never the food. Number 4. The single most powerful factor in whether a bird decides your yard is truly safe is not what you put out. It is how you move through it. This is the finding that surprises people most, and it is now supported by multiple independent lines of research. A study from the University of Exeter tracking garden bird behavior across dozens of residential properties found that feeder quality, the type of seed, the style of feeder, the height and placement, was a significant but secondary factor in long-term bird site fidelity. The primary factor was human behavioral consistency. Yards where humans moved predictably, slowly, and non-threateningly produced birds that returned more often, stayed longer, and showed measurably lower stress responses during feeding. Yards with better feeders but more erratic human behavior, people rushing outside, slamming doors, moving suddenly near the windows, produced less committed birds that fed quickly and left. The birds were not evaluating the food supply. They were evaluating the humans. Specifically, they were evaluating whether the humans in this yard were predictable. Because predictability, for a bird living in a world of genuine predators, is the closest thing to safety that exists. A predator is by definition unpredictable. It moves without warning. It appears where it wasn't before. It changes the environment in sudden, dangerous ways. A human who moves slowly and consistently, who appears at the same times, who does not lunge or rush or surprise, that human stops reading as a predator. The bird's threat assessment system, which is always running, simply stops flagging you. You become part of the safe background of the yard, and the yard becomes, by extension, genuinely safe. What this means practically for you. The slow walk to the feeder in the morning matters. The quiet way you open the back door matters. The habit of being present in your yard without urgency, without sudden movement, without disrupting the rhythm, all of it is being registered by birds that you may think aren't paying attention. They are always paying attention. You have just, gradually, become something they no longer need to be afraid of. Number 5. If you know what to look for, you can see the moment the decision has already happened. There are specific behavioral markers that researchers use to identify birds that have crossed the threshold into genuine site fidelity. And once you know what they are, you will start recognizing them in your own yard. The bird arrives before the feeder is filled. It is not there for the food in that moment. It is there because this is where it goes. The yard itself is the destination. The food is secondary. The bird uses exposed perches it previously avoided. Early in the testing phase, birds stay in cover, dense branches, hidden spots with escape routes close by. A bird that has decided your yard is safe will perch in the open. On top of the feeder. On a fence post in full view. On the ground in the middle of the yard. Exposure is the clearest behavioral signal of trust. The bird stays when you appear. Not just tolerates your presence from a distance. Stays. Keeps eating. Keeps foraging. Adjusts slightly, maybe moves to a branch a few feet further away, but does not flush. Does not leave. The calculation has been made. You are not a threat. Your arrival does not change the yard's safety status. The bird brings others. This is the one that stops people when they notice it for the first time. A bird that has evaluated your yard as safe does not keep that information to itself. It returns with a mate, with juveniles, with flock members. It is not coincidence. The bird has, in its way, vouched for your yard to the other birds in its life. Your yard has been recommended. And then there is the final sign. The one that is hardest to describe and easiest to feel. The bird is simply at home. You know what it looks like. You have seen it. The bird that moves through your yard without urgency, without furtiveness, without the constant micro-alertness of a creature in unfamiliar territory. The bird that bathes without rushing, that preens in full view, that sits on the branch in the afternoon sun doing nothing in particular, just existing in your yard as if it has every right to be there. Because it has decided it does. There is something I want you to sit with before you go. We have talked today about threat assessments and reliability profiles and neurological thresholds. All of that is real. All of that is happening. The science behind it is solid and it is growing every year as researchers find new ways to study what birds actually experience in the places they choose to live. But here is the thing that the science keeps pointing toward and cannot quite fully explain. The yards that birds decide are safest, the yards that cross that threshold most consistently, that produce the deepest site fidelity, that birds return to year after year across migrations and seasons and the full arc of their short, extraordinary lives, are almost never the yards with the most expensive feeders. They are the yards with the most present people. People who go outside not just to fill the feeder but to simply be there. People who watch without urgency. People who have, over months and years, made themselves a consistent and gentle presence in the lives of wild creatures that had no reason to trust them and eventually did anyway. The bird that has decided your yard is the safest place it has ever found did not make that decision because of the sunflower seeds. It made it because of you. Because you were there. Consistently. Quietly. Without demanding anything from it. And at some point, in that invisible, unrepeatable moment that you never got to see, a wild thing looked at the space you had made and decided it was safe to stay. That is not a small thing. That is, in its way, one of the most remarkable relationships available to a human being. Built without words, without touch, without any of the tools we normally use to earn trust. Built only through patience and presence and showing up the same way, day after day, until something wild decided you were worth believing in. The next time a bird stays when you walk outside, the next time the yard doesn't go quiet when you appear, the next time a bird preens in full view while you watch from 10 feet away, you will know what you are seeing. You will know the decision has already been made. Tell me in the comments, when did you first notice that a bird in your yard had stopped being afraid of you? What was the moment you realized something had changed? I want to hear it. I read every single one. And those stories, the ones about the exact moment a wild thing decided to trust, are the ones I carry the longest. I'll see you in the next one.